I just feel like people generally have no concept of how fast stuff's going to change, because this change already lives in their labs. And that's usually we're getting things that's 12 plus months old of what they've already been able to unlock internally. So there's always a smarter version. Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Show, the podcast that helps your business grow smarter by making AI approachable and actionable. My name is Paul Raitzer. I'm the founder and CEO of SmarterX and Marketing AI Institute, and I'm your host. Each week, I'm joined by my co-host and Marketing AI Institute Chief Content Officer, Mike Kaput, as we break down all the AI news that matters and give you insights and perspectives that you can use to advance your company and your career. Join us as we accelerate AI literacy for all. Welcome to episode 148 of the Artificial Intelligence Show. I'm your host, Paul Raitzer, along with my co-host, Mike Kaput, who is fresh off his stint at SaaStr this week. So yes. We are recording Sunday morning. This is an unusual recording day. So if you're new to the show, we normally record on Mondays, drops on Tuesdays. But we're recording Sunday morning, May 18th, because I have to leave for London tonight. So Mike and I are like passing ships in the night here. So Mike was at SaaStr. Give me the quick rundown, Mike. You and I haven't really caught up. How was SaaStr? What was that like? I've never gone to the conference.
Incredible event. It was my first time being there. Even in the short time I was there, kind of helping out moderate a panel with Google Cloud. Just made a ton of great connections. I mean, the show floor is amazing. Thousands of people there. Definitely, as far as I can tell, all in on AI. AI is everywhere. So yeah, I got to moderate a panel on their CMO Summit track, which was kind of a private event within the event.
Oh, cool.
Got to talk to leaders at Google Cloud and Demandbase about the future of AI for CMOs and marketing leaders. And it was an awesome panel, awesome conversation. Had some fans of the podcast come up afterwards and take photos and stuff. It was fun.
I will say, like, I know you get out and do some events as well. It has become, I haven't quite adjusted yet to the fact that anytime I go to events, there are like a dozen or so people that come up and like just want to talk about the podcast. So shout out to all of our listeners. I mean, it's still wild to me that this podcast has grown so big, and we have so many people who are regular listeners to the show. I was at one, I think it was a week or two ago. It was on a Tuesday, so the episode had just come out like an hour earlier, and someone came up to me and started like talking to me about something from that episode. I was like, how do they know this? Like, this isn't even out yet. And then I realized like they must have listened to it in their hotel room before they like came down for breakfast.
Oh my gosh,
just wild. Yeah, that's awesome. Glad you got to do that. Google Cloud has been an amazing partner of ours. So it's always fun to get to do events with them. Yeah, and then I'm heading to London. I have a series of talks this week on, I think it's Tuesday and Wednesday, maybe. So I'll be back in town later this week. But yeah, this is my last like big trip before the summer, and then I only have like a couple of engagements for the summer, so I get to be home with the kids and Cheryl. So that should be nice.
That's great.
All right. So before I jump on my plane to London, let's get into episode 148. It is going to be a wild week ahead. We'll give a little preview of some of the stuff that's likely coming, but we've got Google I/O, where we know some stuff's going to be dropping. That's happening May 20 to 21, which means that OpenAI is probably going to drop another model. We may get the Anthropic model this week. It's gonna be a wild end to May. I think we're gonna go into June with a bang when it comes to model releases and news. But we've got some bigger items to talk about going into this week. So this week's episode is brought to us by the AI for B2B Marketers Summit. This is one of our marquee virtual summits through Marketing AI Institute. This year's event is presented by Intercept, and it is packed with incredible sessions from top B2B marketing experts. It's all happening virtually on Thursday, June 5th, starting at noon Eastern time. You'll learn real-world strategies to use AI to grow better, create smarter content, build stronger customer relationships, and much more. So thanks to our sponsors, there is a free ticket option. So as with a number of our virtual events, you have the choice to do the free ticket option. There is a private registration option. I think that one's $99 if I'm not mistaken. And that means your contact information is not shared with the sponsors. And then there is an on-demand option as well. So if you happen to be in a different time zone or just can't make it, there is an on-demand option there. So that is B2B Summit.ai. Again, that is the number 2B Summit.ai to learn more. And this episode is also brought to us by MAICON 2025. So this is our flagship in-person event through Marketing Institute, the Marketing AI Conference. We started this in 2019. So if you are ready to drive personal and business AI transformation, join us in Cleveland, October 14th to 16th on the shores of Lake Erie, right across from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is where the convention center is that we'll be at. With dozens of speakers already announced, dozens of breakout and main stage sessions you can check out, and 4 hands-on workshops, including one Mike is teaching and one I am leading. This is our 6th year for the Marketing Institute to bring forward-thinking marketers together to share, learn, and connect. We had about 1,100 last year, so we're expecting more than that this year. Prices go up May 31st, so grab your ticket now at maicon.ai. That is MAICON.ai. Okay, let's jump in. Again, if you're new, I know every week we have new listeners, so what we do with this weekly is 3 main topics is the normal format. So we kind of pick the 3 main topics. Usually we go 5, 7, 10 minutes on each of those topics, and then we go through rapid fire items, and there's usually 7 to 10 rapid fire items. We do it all in about, I don't know, I always think it's going to be an hour. It never is an hour. It's always like an hour 15. But you can go up to 2x on your podcast listening network of choice and get done in under an hour. So, all right, Mike, let's go.
All right. So first up, Microsoft is cutting about 6,000 jobs, roughly 3% of its workforce, in a move that the company says is aimed at removing layers of management. And we're kind of seeing this as another example of the quiet AI layoffs that we've been tracking. Now, it sounds like from some of the reporting, the cuts are hitting software engineers the hardest. In Washington state alone, nearly half of all the layoffs that Microsoft did there were engineers. Product managers and technical program leads were also disproportionately affected. It seems like frontline sales and customer support roles were somewhat untouched. And Microsoft is kind of leaning into this messaging about saying we need to shed layers of management and build a more efficient business. And AI is playing a big role in that in a few ways. Microsoft is spending big on AI, an estimated $80 billion this fiscal year on data centers alone. And the tools it's building seem to already be reshaping internal workflows and expectations. For instance, CEO Satya Nadella recently said AI now writes up to 30% of the code on some projects. Now, some are looking at this a little more starkly. So we found a post on X from someone we determined is an employee at Microsoft, a software engineer at Microsoft AI named Armin Conker, posted about this development saying, quote, "My company just laid off thousands of tech workers to invest in AI. This is endgame." So Paul, starting back on episode 145, we began really talking in earnest about this phenomenon. You had indicated at the time it was your belief that quiet AI layoffs had been happening for the last 6 to 12 months, that they're now accelerating. Sometimes they're under the guise of other cost cutting. Certainly seems like Microsoft is an example of more of this. I mean, AI is a key factor in the efficiency plays they're making, yet the stated reason for the cuts is about shedding layers of management. How are you looking at this and reading between the lines here?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that that's what's happening. Now, we have to accept like big tech companies lay people off all the time. Like there's always the cyclical nature of these layoffs, but given the environment of where we are and the advancements of the technology and the comments from executives in other venues, other news outlets, it's not hard to connect the dots of kind of what's going on and what they think is coming. So just to like call out a couple of elements from the Bloomberg article, Mike, that you were citing. So we continue, this is a quote from their spokesperson, we continue to implement organizational changes necessary to best position the company for success. in a dynamic marketplace. In Bloomberg, they go on to say Microsoft, which employed 228,000 people in June 2024, deploys periodic layoffs, often to reorient its headcount towards priority areas. So, for example, they laid off 10,000 people in January 2023. Does talk about the company being under pressure in recent years to keep a lid on costs amid the massive spending for the data centers, like you had highlighted, the 80 billion they have committed this year in capex. But then I thought what was telling was there was a excerpt from the article where they said last year, CEO Satya Nadella said AI was helping the company save on labor costs. The theme came up again on Tuesday during a JP Morgan conference when Microsoft finance executive Bill Duff said the company is, quote, saving hundreds of millions of dollars a year, unquote, by using AI for customer support and reducing the need for human interaction. Duff said Microsoft is deploying AI across multiple divisions to help personnel analyze deals for compliance issues, write marketing materials, and other tasks. The company routinely reorients its workforce, that is a very popular way of explaining what happens, away from legacy products and toward growth initiatives. So again, it is common for sure. But the thing we've talked about previously is this idea that software engineers who are writing code are basically the canaries in the coal mine right now for AI job disruption, because that's the one that all the executives are talking about. How much code is being written by the AI? And as they look forward, they expect that to become dramatically more. So we'll drop a link in the show notes to a TechCrunch article in which Mark Zuckerberg was actually interviewing Satya Nadella last week. Might have been the week before. This was at the end of April at the LlamaCon conference, which we talked about on previous episode. And so Satya said in that one, which you had just cited, Mike, the 20 to 30% of code inside the company's repositories was written by software, meaning AI. Microsoft CTO Kevin Scott previously said that he expects 95% of all code to be AI generated by 2030. So it's not like we're drawing some difficult to find conclusion here. If the CTO of the company is saying that within 5 years, we expect 95% of all code to be written by the AI, then what do you need a bunch of engineers for? So this is just a prelude to, and it's basically looking on saying, okay, like as it gets better and better, more accurate, we're just going to need fewer software engineers. Sundar Pichai, CEO of Google Alphabet, said AI was generating more than 30% of their company's code. So now it's not clear exactly like the impact it's going to have, but Zuckerberg's on record saying they're going to have a junior AI engineer, software engineer by the end of this year. So, it's just, that's why I say the canary in the coal mine is like, you look at this and it's the one they're all building for because it has compounding value to automate with AI, the writing of code and the creation of products and the improvement of research and all these things. But if you then take that out and start looking at other industries and say, well, there's no reason they couldn't do this in a bunch of other professions. They're just choosing to first do it with engineering. So you'll remember this, Mike, like back in 2014, when I wrote the Marketing Performance Blueprint, which was the first time I publicly shared any of my research on AI. And Mike worked with me on the research project to write the section of the book that was related to AI. So there's a section in my 2014 book called Algorithms and Artificial Intelligence. Now, in that section, I cited a study from the University of Oxford. So this was a study done in 2013 called The Future of Employment, How Susceptible Are Jobs to Computerization. Now, that study was before Gen AI. So this was just looking at machine learning. Deep learning was emerging. Like we had the breakthrough in image recognition in 2011, 2012. So like they were starting to think we could see deep learning become a thing, but it wasn't a thing by any means yet. And at that time, that study found 47% of total US employment was at risk of computerization, which they called job automation by means of computer controlled equipment. And at the time, the high risk jobs were telemarketers, insurance sales agents, real estate agents, market research analysts, marketing specialists, PR specialists, graphic designers. Again, before Gen AI. And so if you now look at and say, okay, if we look at what's happening with software engineering, and we know the labs are pushing on automating coding, what happens when the startup world emerges and says, well, let's go do this for accounting and bookkeeping. Let's go do this for legal assistance. Let's go do this for HR and recruiting. Let's go do it for diagnostic medical roles and all the content creation. It's all it takes now is just like someone to say, okay, like let's push on this one. Let's get those to 30, 40% with a view to 75+%, just like is happening with engineering. And so that's, I don't know. That's again why I think it's just so important we have these conversations and we start being realistic. I get that people are like doubt that this is going to happen. Like I understand that it's hard to like comprehend, but we're watching it happen. Like it's literally happening right now,
Right.
and people still want to pretend like this isn't going to come and affect jobs in the economy. And I just don't understand that perspective. Yeah, so I don't know. Again, it's a topic we'll probably keep talking about because I think we just need more conversation in different industries. So like if you're in the legal industry, look at this and then try and like start thinking ahead. What does it mean to you? It's just critical that we're doing that.
You know, kind of as a counterweight to all that, we've kind of also talked about the fact that in the rush to potentially automate or augment workforces, that there is a danger that you're using AI for things that it can't adequately do yet. You're getting rid of people too fast. Kind of that difference between AI first versus AI forward. And
Yeah.
we kind of did see an example of that this week because, as early as late last year, we've been talking about the company on and off Klarna. It's a fintech company. And we've been talking about them because their CEO has been like all over the headlines bragging about how the company is freezing hiring and automating away hundreds of customer service positions thanks to AI. Well, it came out this past week. He's now reversing course, going on a hiring spree because AI was not producing the quality needed for the roles that he needed it for. He actually said to Bloomberg, as cost unfortunately seems to have been a too predominant evaluation factor when organizing this, meaning his big push to have AI automate away humans, what you end up having is lower quality. Really investing in the quality of the human support is the way of the future for us. So, Paul, maybe you could just give me a quick bit of context there. Like, it seems like this isn't as black and white, perhaps, as some of the AI futurists want us to believe.
Yeah, so we talk about all this automation and job disruption, but what we also have to do is have business leaders within these enterprises that are being realistic about what the capabilities of the AI truly is, because we do see too much like rapid like disruption happening because assumptions are being made that it can replace people. And one, like as we've said many times, I'm not an advocate of that approach at all. Like I'm fine with like maybe we don't hire as many people moving forward, but we shouldn't be thinking first and foremost like let's just get rid of all the people. Um, but I think that a lot of companies are just assuming you hear all these AI agent talk and everything, and they just assume it can actually do the job of people. So in this case, yeah, as a high profile person, they got out over their skis a little bit, in terms of making all these claims. And now they're, kind of circling back around, realizing people aren't all that bad. I did love the futurism. We'll put a link in the show notes. The headline, I don't know if AI wrote it or if there's actually like a human writing these headlines, but the headline was, company regrets replacing all those pesky human workers with AI, just wants its humans back. It's like, it's so perfect. And I can imagine seeing a lot of that. I think there could be these situations where almost like you see with Doge right now in the US government, where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, let's just get rid of all these pesky people. Oh, wait, they were like fundamentally important to what we were doing and critical to our operations. Let's bring all those pesky humans back. And so I think you could probably see something like that occur. And maybe tech's always going to be kind of leading on this, good or bad, where maybe 6 months, 12 months from now, it's like, oh, actually, we do kind of need a bunch of people in customer success because humans actually like talking to other humans sometimes. So I don't know. I think it's going to ebb and flow. I don't think there's this like cutoff point where we just fall off this cliff and all the jobs go away. I think
Mm.
it's just going to ebb and flow by industry. And some people are going to move too fast and a bunch are going to move too slow. And that's probably actually the greater risk, honestly, right now, is that you just sit around for 3 years and wait and see what happens with all these other companies that are figuring this out. No,
Right.
that trial and error is going to lead to the breakthroughs and the innovations that are going to obsolete your company if you do nothing.
Our next big topic this week is that President Donald Trump has fired the head of the US Copyright Office just days after the office released a report questioning how AI companies use copyrighted material to train models. Now, this report notably pushed back on the idea that scraping vast amounts of copyrighted content always qualifies as fair use, which is what big AI labs tend to argue in this debate. Now, the firing of Shira Perlmutter, who had held this role since 2020, came right after Trump also ousted the Librarian of Congress. Some industry sources have speculated that this was a bit of a tech industry coup, possibly linked to Elon Musk's vocal disdain for intellectual property. And that's because this new report is seen as a pretty significant win, or, planting a flag in the ground for copyright advocates, because it's not legally binding, but it provides a bunch of guidance from the US Copyright Office on how it's viewing AI companies using copyrighted materials. And at the core of this, like I mentioned, and at the core of this overall debate is fair use doctrine, which major AI labs use to justify the fact they've scraped copyrighted material to train models and produce outputs. Basically, the thinking is if your use of the copyrighted work falls under these fair use rules that are enshrined in US law, you are not infringing on the work's copyright. So this report is 113 pages, and over it, it appears to challenge the idea that all this AI training is fair use. So according to AI copyright expert Ed Newton-Rex, who we've talked about before, it basically concludes that some uses of copyrighted work by AI aren't what they would call transformative enough or changed enough in their usage from the original material. It also concludes that AI use of these materials in their training may seriously dilute the market for similar works. That's a big consideration when lawmakers judge whether or not something constitutes fair use. So Newton-Rex actually said, quote, "Many of us have been saying this for a long time, shouted down by a chorus of AI boosters. It's great to see the US Copyright Office, the government body responsible for providing guidance on copyright law, agreeing." So, Paul, let's maybe first talk about the report's conclusions, then get a little bit into the political fallout here. Again, this is not legally binding, but it does serve as pretty strong guidance on what they're thinking related to copyright concerns related to AI. So, how big of a deal are the conclusions in this report?
Yeah, I don't know what kind of long-term impact they're going to have, in terms of, is it going to change anything? But I mean, obviously big enough that within 24 hours they fired him.
Yeah.
So like the people involved. Um, so, again, just to rewind here, all the AI labs building these models absolutely used copyrighted materials. They absolutely knew it was a legal gray area and most likely illegal at the time based on current US law. But they knew the other labs were doing it. And if they didn't train on the copyrighted materials, their models would not be on par with their competitors. And so they basically took a financial and legal gamble that whatever the outcome of this is, even if we end up losing in courts, one, it's going to take 5 to 10 years to all play out, and the game's over by then if we wait. Two is, if we end up having to pay billions of dollars in fines, we're pursuing a market worth trillions of dollars. So we got to go. And so they all kind of had this window to figure this out, and this is part of what happened back in 2022 when ChatGPT came out and did something Google hadn't been willing to do to that point. Google was under too much regulatory scrutiny. They couldn't have basically done what ChatGPT and OpenAI did. But once that was, that happened in the market, it triggered this massive competition between Google and Meta and all the other players to just go do it too. Now, again, they had all probably already been training models on these things, but they hadn't released a high profile consumer product with these models that had been trained on this stuff. So I think I'll call out a few excerpts that I assume is what caused for the firing. So this is straight from the document. We will put the PDF in the show notes. Throw it in Notebook LM and explore it. It's like 113 pages, if I'm not mistaken. So there's a lot to it, but I'll try and call out the things I think are the triggering points. So in the doc, it says, in providing this analysis, the office rejects two common arguments about the transformative nature of AI training. As noted above, some argue that the use of copyrighted works to train AI models is inherently transformative because it is not for expressive purposes. We view this argument as mistaken. Again, they didn't mess around with their language. They're very direct. um, Language models are trained on examples that are hundreds of thousands of tokens in length, absorbing not just the meaning and parts of speech of words, but how they are selected and arranged at the sentence, paragraph, and document level. The essence of linguistics expression, image models are trained on, then we go on to image models. Image models are trained on curated data sets of aesthetic images because those images lead to aesthetic outputs. Where the resulting model is used to generate expressive content or potentially reproduce copyrighted expression, the training use cannot be fairly characterized as non-expressive. Goes on to say, we do not agree that AI training is inherently transformative because it is like human learning. To begin with, because that's when you hear all the time, well, this is how humans learn. We go online, we absorb things, and then we create things. So it's just like imitating how humans learn. So they're saying that is not true. They say, to begin with, the analogy rests on a faulty premise, as fair use does not excuse all human acts done for the purpose of learning. A student could not rely on fair use to copy all the books at the library to facilitate personal education. Rather, they would have to purchase or borrow a copy that was lawfully acquired, typically through a sale or license. Copyright law should not afford greater latitude for copying simply because it is done by a computer. Moreover, AI learning is different from human learning in ways that are material to the copyright analysis. Humans retain only imperfect impressions of the works they have experienced, filtered through their own unique personalities, histories, memories, and worldviews. Generative AI training involves the creation of perfect copies with the ability to analyze works nearly instantaneously. The result is a model that can create at superhuman speed and scale. In other words, of Professor Robert Browness, generative model training transcends the human limitations that underlie the structure of the exclusive rights. And then two quick excerpts from the conclusion. Making commercial use of vast troves of copyrighted works to produce expressive content that competes with them in existing markets, especially where this is accomplished through illegal access, goes beyond established fair use boundaries. In our view, American leadership in the AI space would best be furthered by supporting both of these world-class industries that contribute so much to our economic and cultural advancement. Effective licensing options can ensure that innovation continues to advance without undermining intellectual property rights. These groundbreaking technologies should benefit both the innovators who design them and the creators whose content fuels them, as well as the general public. Now imagine when this goes to the Supreme Court, that is basically the argument being made on the side of fair use or on the side of the creators. And so that's why the administration's pissed. They basically know there's a bunch of legal battles involving Mark Zuckerberg, Sam Altman, Elon Musk, all the people who are giving the money to the administration, who are fighting for American innovation. They don't want this to be the outcome. If it does, it impacts their ability to drive innovation in America. And the U.S. Copyright Office just laid out the argument that could go against all of that. That's why they get fired. Now, what happens? I have no idea, but my best guess is someone gets installed into this position that rewrites this paper so that it does not, when it goes to the courts, this is not the position of the U.S. government. Because as of right now, this is now the official position of the U.S. government that can be used in legal proceedings.
So at first I was excited we had more clarity on this, but it seems like that might not be the case.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see what happens. I did see an article. I'll try and find what they're on the show notes. That was like the firings backfired because somebody got installed into the position who's actually like anti-tech, and it might actually be worse for the tech companies.
Yeah, there was some reporting from The Verge that actually what happened as of right now is that people who are installed in these positions are actually still part of the Trump administration's coalition, but less on the tech accelerationist side and more on the kind of anti-big tech side. So they're a bit hardliner on this. We'll see how that actually plays out, but not the ideal people you would expect to be in these positions if you're against copyright law.
Yeah, we'll try and keep an eye. I'm very curious to see how fast before we see these exact words quoted in an ongoing case. My guess is the briefs have already been written and it's like been submitted as, evidence or supporting materials in existing court cases. Like I can't imagine this wasn't within a day already being injected into actual briefings.
Yeah, we had obviously won't name names, but we had a partner of ours who was sent me an email the other day after we had done some work together and was like, "Hey, could you just what's the latest on AI copyright? We were thinking of these questions and wondering about some nuances here." And I just wanted to cry. I was like, "I'm so sorry. I don't have a good answer for you here. This is a highly paid lawyer's question because
Yeah.
I can't answer that."
Yeah, we are not giving legal advice. We say this all the time. We are not lawyers. There's no legal advice, and we're not providing investing advice. We are providing commentary on what is happening in the world.
All right. So our third topic this week is about something we actually released, which is we released our 5th annual State of Marketing AI report from Marketing AI Institute and SmarterX. And in this year's report, we had almost 1,900 marketing and business leaders answer 23 different questions about AI usage and adoption. And we actually found a ton of really useful insights as a result about where the marketing industry is actually at when it comes to AI. So, Paul, in this segment, I was going to share just a few of the key findings from the report, kind of get your thoughts where you have them on certain stats here. I would highly encourage everyone go download the full report at stateofmarketingai.com. There's a ton more in here than what we'll go through here. So I'm just going to dive in.
And I think the webinar's on demand too. Like they could probably,
Yeah. So if
I
you go to
believe you can access.
marketingaiinstitute.com under resources and click webinars, you'll be able to quickly see where we have the webinar on demand. Diving further into this, definitely also
Yeah, we'll
worth
drop the direct link for that in the show notes too.
Absolutely. So we did find, to kick things off, that marketers are racing ahead with AI. We ask about various aspects of the marketing team's AI usage every year. And this year, actually, 60% together either said they were piloting or scaling AI. You could choose from 3 phases: understanding, piloting, or scaling. And 60% are now either prioritizing and running AI pilot projects or say they are pursuing wide-scale adoption of AI. And what's really cool is because we've started to benchmark this over several years, we can see that that's actually an 18 percentage point jump since 2023, where only 42% were in either phase, which is super interesting to see that kind of growth and adoption. When we ask about what are you trying to achieve with AI, marketers say they're more likely than ever to say that they're trying to actually save time. So this year, 82% said they're reducing the time they spend on repetitive data-driven tasks was the primary outcome they're trying to achieve with AI. Not only was this the top answer, it was the highest percentage of responses for this question that we've recorded so far. There was some cool data on tools. Respondents overwhelmingly said ChatGPT was their favorite tool when asked. That was like 57% of people. We also asked if their organization provides licenses to either ChatGPT Team or Enterprise, Microsoft Copilot, or Google Gemini, or none of the above. ChatGPT was also a leader here, with 61% saying that their company was most likely to provide them with a ChatGPT license. Now, what's interesting is that actually steadily declines in popularity as firms get bigger. So it's much higher on the low end, $1 to $10 million, for instance, in revenue. Had 70% of people saying this. It falls to 37% when you look at firms with $1 billion plus, and that gap is often filled by Microsoft Copilot. Now, a big finding, we cite this every single year, a lack of training is a huge barrier to AI adoption. So once again, marketers cited a lack of education and training as their top barrier when we ask about this. That's been the case every single year. We've published the report. This year, 62% said it was a top barrier. Not to mention, we also asked, do you have AI training at your company? 68% of respondents say no, and that consists of 44% saying they don't have it, 21% saying it's in development, and 3% unsure if it exists. I mean, Paul, we talk about that stat all the time because it's really not changing fast enough.
Yeah, and just a reminder, we've touched on this before, but this is almost 1,900 people from our audience. So this is like Marketing AI Institute subscribers. It is people who listen to the podcast. This is likely the leading edge in terms of adoption.
Yeah.
So when you're hearing this data, it's not necessarily representative of the entire market, because people who aren't doing this stuff likely aren't listening to the podcast or subscribing to Marketing Institute, coming to our events, following Smarter X. So this is like, in my assumption, this is probably the best of the best. This is
Right.
like more indicative of what innovators are doing than the laggards in the market.
Yeah,
So
that's
I
so
actually
true.
think the data is like skewed and has bias because it's a forward-thinking audience already.
Yeah, and if you check out the full report, we go in depth into the methodology, the respondents, so you can see exactly kind of who is answering these questions. Couple more data points I want to call out here. So unfortunately, marketers seem more pessimistic than ever about AI's impact on marketing jobs. So this year, 53% said they believe more marketing jobs will be eliminated by AI than will be created. We started asking this question in 2023, and it's the highest number on record. It's risen by 13 percentage points in just 2 years. Now, it should be noted, marketers are a bit more nuanced when we also asked this year, what do you think the impact will be on your job specifically? The highest proportion, about 33%, say they're neutral in their concern about AI's impact on their job. They see both risks and opportunities. That was the highest percentage answer. Now, last but not least, we actually found through a series of data points that when you look at the data at the end of the day, it's clear that things like AI roadmaps, AI infrastructure is the unlock, because we ask about, do you have an AI roadmap or strategy for the next 1 to 2 years that kind of outlines your use cases and direction for AI? 75% lack one. But when we look at who does have one, the people who do have an AI roadmap are also twice as likely across several data points to have training available, to provide prompt training, to have an AI council, and to have generative AI and AI ethics policies. So, Paul, I was just wondering to kind of get your thoughts on that. It really does seem like the way forward is just more formal AI infrastructure within your organization.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many interesting data points in here, and the fact that we now have years of benchmark data is always so fascinating to me to go back through this. I'll just kind of highlight, and a couple of these you hit on, Mike, but when we, every month I do this free scaling AI class where I teach these 5 steps for scaling AI, and it's actually the basis for the entire scaling AI course, scalingai.com, and see more about that. But we teach these 5 steps. And so one of the ways I actually assess AI transformation within an organization is to look at how far along they are with each of these steps. So the first is education and training. Do you have an internal AI academy? 32%. Yes. So that's only a third have it. Do you have an AI council? Only a third, 33%. Do you have generative AI policies? 38%. AI ethics policies, 41%. We don't ask directly, have you done AI impact assessments? But to show the need for those, 53% now believe that more jobs will be eliminated because of AI in the next few years. Interestingly, when we asked the question, which I think was a newer question this year, how do you personally feel about AI and the impact it's having? 70% said positive. So despite all this, like, people are actually optimistic. And then the last one, Mike, that you had really zoomed in on is this idea of an AI roadmap. Only a quarter of them, 25%. So to me, this screens opportunity, because again, these are probably more likely to be forward-thinking, AI-forward professionals and leaders.
Yeah.
And this is still where we're at. Like, a third are doing the things that they actually need to be doing. So for you, regardless of your job, regardless of what company you're in, what industry, where you're at in your career, the opportunity is so massive to like move, like stop being overwhelmed by it and having all this anxiety about it. Just go do something, because this data just keeps showing we're not seeing leaps in any of this stuff. We're seeing, 5 percentage point, 8 percentage point, which, maybe 10%, 20% improvement each year. We are not seeing the switch flip to where it's like, oh, okay, now 80% of people have generative AI policies and 90% have a roadmap. And I don't think we're anywhere close. Like, we've been doing this for what, 5 years? Did you say 6 years now?
5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, it's incremental every year. So to me, it just screams opportunity. And I would race ahead to integrate these 5 components that I just highlighted.
Yeah, clearly doing something is better than what the vast majority of people appear to have been doing, which is nothing at the company level.
Yeah, wild.
All right, let's dive into this week's rapid fire. So, first up, OpenAI has launched a major new tool for developers called Codex. This is a cloud based software engineering agent that writes code, fixes bugs, and submits pull requests all on its own. Unlike a chatbot assistant, Codex appears to work more like a full fledged coworker. It takes assignments, runs tests, and returns finished work inside a secure cloud sandbox. It's powered by a model called Codex 1. This is fine tuned with reinforcement learning to match real world developer habits. It can handle multiple tasks at once, work with actual repositories, and follow instructions from project specific agents.md files that guide how it navigates and tests code. So OpenAI says that companies like Cisco are already starting to test out this tool in real world environments. OpenAI engineers say they rely on it daily to reduce context switching and handle repetitive tasks. Right now, Codex is available to ChatGPT Pro, Team, and Enterprise users, and apparently Plus and EDU access is coming soon. So, Paul, I wanted to get your initial thoughts on Codex. Obviously, you and I are not programmers, but this definitely comes at an interesting time as we're seeing more and more people start to wake up to the fact that truly agentic AI like this could have a pretty serious impact on knowledge work.
Yeah, I mean, a few quick takeaways here. People who build things already are going to build smarter and faster. So people who can code are going to code faster, just as we talked about with the Microsoft story up front. Probably not unrelated that these kind of advancements are happening. Microsoft has a unique relationship with OpenAI, likely has had access to this kind of tooling for potentially months. And so, yeah, I mean, I think things that get built are going to get built faster. So as a consumer of these products, as a business leader, as a practitioner, a knowledge worker, it's just going to explode. Like the apps that it can be built, the things these apps can do, the tech's going to get smarter. That's what this means to most of us. To the non-developer audience, it just means developers are going to build faster and smarter. This is not a product that you or I are going to go play around with, Mike. It's a product for developers.
Next up, in a recent chat with Sequoia Capital, Sam Altman reflected on OpenAI's journey so far as a company, and as part of this discussion, highlighted a really interesting aspect of the company's larger ambition. He talked about how they want to become the core AI subscription, those are their words, for your life. Basically, the central interface used to interact with the world, powered by AI, hyper-personalized to you and your preferences. Now, related to this in this interview, he also notes that kind of crazily, there's already this, what he calls a generational divide when it comes to how different age groups use AI. He said he was seeing that older people tend to use ChatGPT as a Google replacement. People in their 20s and 30s are using it as a life advisor. And people in college seem to be using it like a full-fledged operating system. Now, Paul, taken together, I thought the points about becoming a core AI subscription for your life and the fact that these different groups are already using this in different ways in that context, I found all that really fascinating to kind of think about where we're headed. Like, is this the direction we can expect AI development to go?
This is definitely meant to be a rapid fire item. However, as I was kind of prepping this morning to go through the notes, I actually realized this connects very deeply to another podcast I'd listened to earlier this week. So I watched this interview with Sam, and it's like a 30-minute Q&A. It's a Q&A with the moderator, but then largely with the audience, who's made up of Sequoia portfolio companies, I assume, like, CEOs, founders of tech companies funded by Sequoia. So they get this inside access to Sam as part of that portfolio. So I would recommend watching it. He tells an interesting story of ChatGPT that I actually hadn't heard told in the way he told it, like the origin of it and their own doubts around it and things like that. So it's kind of like an interesting first 7 minutes where he sort of goes into that. But I want to call out a few quotes he had and provide them under categories, because I think this is actually, it ends up being really important. Like, I think 6 months from now, we could probably come back to this episode. What I'm about to tell you, I think, will make a lot more sense. So I'll do my best to explain why I think it's really important right now. So first, he got asked about enterprise adoption. And he did say it's going to reshape everything, but that basically companies move really slow. He really nailed on this 20, 30-year-old thing. He kept coming back to this theme. But he basically said a bunch of enterprises are just going to get obsoleted, that the startups are just going to move so fast and these companies aren't going to move quick enough. And they're basically all screwed is kind of what he was saying. But he said, this basically happens to people too. That's where he said, talk to a 20-year-old about how they use ChatGPT and then go look at a 35-year-old and it's just completely different how the uses is. And this actually ties back to an episode or two ago when we talked about them having to pull back the updated 4.0 model because they didn't realize how the younger generation was using it fully. And then they realized once they did that, like, they hadn't really accounted for that usage as like therapists and friends and relationships and things like that. When he talked about that young people use, the quote that you kind of alluded to, he said gross oversimplification, but older people use ChatGPT as a Google replacement. People in their 20s and 30s use it as a life advisor, and people in college use it as an operating system. The operating system is the key phrase here. I will come back to that. I thought it was really interesting. They asked him about the importance of voice. And we had all this, drama last year when the voice agent came out and it sounded like Scarlett Johansson from Her. And it like made you think that they'd totally cracked the code on voice. Well, he said, quote, "We just haven't made a good enough voice product yet. And that's fine. It took us a while to make a good enough text model. We'll crack that code eventually. And when we do, I think a lot of people are going to want to use voice interaction a lot more. When we first launched our current voice mode, the thing that was most interesting to me was it introduced a new stream on top of the touch interface. You could talk and be clicking around on your phone at the same time. I continue to think there's something amazing to do with the voice user interface. We just haven't cracked it yet. But before that, we'll make voice really great. And when we do, not only will it be cool with existing devices, but I think of voice will enable a totally new class of devices if you can make it feel truly human level." So that's a prelude to them getting into the device business, which we know that they're looking at. They talked about future innovation, and he was basically like, okay, so is it algorithms? Is it data? Is it these massive data centers? Is it more NVIDIA chips with compute? Like, what is the thing? And he did say that he thinks there's still big algorithmic breakthroughs to be had that'll unlock 10x to 100x improvements. He said, I don't think there's very many, but there might be one or two, like the invention of the transformer, like these truly, breakthrough things that change the future of development. And then this is the one I wanted to center on. When he got asked about customization. So we've talked many times about how OpenAI's vision is truly personalized ChatGPT experiences to where, Mike, you and I have totally different experiences with ChatGPT.
Right.
So he said, the interviewer said, "I'm curious how you're thinking about customization. You mentioned the federated sign-in with OpenAI, bringing your memories and your context. I'm just wondering if you see customization and these different post-training application-specific efforts as a kind of Band-Aid or a step toward making core models better. How are you thinking about that?" And he said, in the Platonic ideal state is a very tiny reasoning model. So imagine like O3 with trillions of tokens of context you put your whole life into. The model never retrains. The weights never customize, meaning the underlying model just doesn't evolve. They just have a great reasoning model. But that thing can reason across your whole context and do it efficiently. Every conversation, again, this is still Sam, every conversation you've ever had in your life, every book you've ever read, every email you've ever read, everything you've ever looked at is in there. Plus, it's connected to all your data from other sources, and your life just keeps appending to the context. Your company does the same with all its data. We can't get there today, but I think of everything else as a compromise off of that Platonic ideal, and that's eventually how I hope we do customization. That is the operating system vision. So when he talks about it being the operating system for your life, for your business, that's it. So when we get to the ability to have a trillion tokens of context, come back to that moment, and he just laid out for this is like, when I heard him say this, I was like, shit, this is like when he wrote the Moore's Law for everything in March 2021, and people just like
And
weren't paying
nobody
attention
paid
yet.
attention.
This is it. This is the same thing. Like when they introduced memory 3 weeks ago, when they introduced the agentic abilities, all of it is for this. So then that led me to this other interview that I didn't even realize it was going to be connected, but on a flight last week or whenever it was, I was listening to Logan Kilpatrick, who we've talked about on the show before, Google DeepMind. He was interviewing like a legendary AI researcher, Nikolai Savinov at Google DeepMind. And the whole premise of the podcast episode was about long context windows. And so I'll call out a couple of things because it's extremely relevant here. So he talked about like in the early days, how like 200,000 tokens of context. Now, again, if you're new to this stuff, a token is a piece of a word. And so a given word may have like 2 tokens in it, 3 tokens in it. So we're talking about 200,000 tokens. You're looking at it's like roughly 70-80% of that is like the number of words that it can remember, basically. So 200,000, you're talking about like 170,000 words. So imagine you're having a conversation with ChatGPT. It remembers things about you. It can roughly remember 170,000 words and talk coherently based on the knowledge that exists within that word. So our last book, Mike, was 50,000 words. So basically, like 3 of our books is like the context window of these models originally.
Right.
But then DeepMind ships one that does 1 million context. So, and I think 2.5 Pro is 2 million
I
context
think at
window.
the moment, yeah.
Yeah. So imagine like if you wanted to use this in your business and you want to give it like a bunch of proposals you've written, you can give, up to say 1.5 million words of context, and it's going to like remember. So the way Notebook LM works, you throw a bunch of stuff in there. The reason it can cite things, it's because it has a really strong context window. So here's where it gets interesting though. When they did the research release in spring of 24, it might have been at the IO conference. I don't remember when they previewed this, but they said in the lab, we tested this on 10 million tokens of context and it works still. So they told us a year ago they could already do 10 million.
Mm.
So this is the first time I heard this explained though. He said, when we released 1.5 Pro, we actually ran some inference tests, meaning testing it like actual chat usage at 10 million, and we got some quality numbers and single needle retrieval. Like we're trying to find a really small thing within there. It was almost perfect for the whole 10 million. We could have shipped this model. So they're saying like we had a market ready 10 million context window a year ago, which means they probably have 100 million right now, 10x, but he said it's pretty expensive to run it. And basically, no one had a use case for it. So, like, if we built this thing, we put it out in the world, like, no developer had anything that they would use it for. So, we're like, let's just like ship some other stuff. So, I was like, okay, so this starts getting really interesting. But then he says, what I think is going to happen is when we achieve close to perfect million context, then it's going to unlock incredible applications, like something we could never imagine, like the ability to process information and connect the dots. It'll increase dramatically. What I think is going to happen, and this is Nikolai again, what I think is going to happen is these superhuman abilities, they are going to be more persuasive. The better the context we have, the more capabilities that we could never imagine are going to be unlocked. So that's step number 1. The quality is going to increase, and we're going to get nearly perfect retrieval. After that, what's going to happen is the cost of the long context is going to decrease. So to do the 10 million is going to cost as the same as the 1 million today. And that's going to, every 12 months, this will happen. So to get to 1 billion in like 2 years, it'll basically cost them to do what they're doing today. So I think, so the cost will increase. So I think reasonably soon we will get that 10 million context window. I have no idea if this is going to, I would not be shocked at all if that actually gets announced at IO this week, that the 10 million is available to build on. That would be really logical, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So the 10 million becomes the commodity. So OpenAI, ChatGPT today is 300,000. I don't even know what ChatGPT is. I don't even think they're
It's
at
a
a
lot.
million.
It's a lot lower
Yeah.
because
So
it's
Google's way ahead
yeah,
on the
yeah.
context window thing. So he says, when this happens and we get like basically the super cheap 10 million, that's going to be a deal breaker for some applications like coding. So go back to the coders. Do we really need people writing code by 2030? He's saying no, because the flaw right now is code databases are massive. But once you can put an entire code base into it and it's perfect at retrieval, then you don't need the humans to do the code. So that gets interesting. And he says, we're going to hold all this information in the memory at once, and they're going to be reproducing any part of this information precisely. Imagine this in the legal industry. Not only that, they will also be able to connect the dots. They will find the connections between files better than coders, basically. I imagine we will very soon get superhuman coding systems. They will be totally unrivaled, and they will basically become the new tool for every coder in the world. And so when this 10 million happens, that's the second step. Then it gets into agents that can operate effectively because now they have basically infinite context. They can keep track of everything. They don't lose, previous actions, all these things. And then he says, so to keep all these previous interactions in memory, so we get back to memory, you need longer context. So that's where long context and agents. So to realize, to wrap this up, to realize the vision Sam is laying out for an operating system, which Google probably has the same vision. It's why they're turning on memory within your emails and calendar and all these things and your search history. Once they have perfect retrieval of everything and everything you've ever done that you've allowed them access to is in the memory, in the context, because it's basically infinite, and they have perfect retrieval ability instantly, everything changes. And so like the key with this interview is this is two tech people. Like Nikolai is not the CEO trying to juice the stock price or raise the next 40 billion or whatever. This is a dude living within the labs, building long context. He's like the expert on long context. He has no reason to hype this stuff. He's just talking about the reality of what they're building. And that to me is like so I guess demonstrative of what is likely to come and why I just feel like people generally have no concept of how fast stuff's going to change, because this change already lives in their labs. And that's usually we're getting things that's 12 plus months old of what they've already been able to unlock internally. So there's always a smarter version. So we always say like, this is the dumbest form of AI we're going to have. Notebook LM, as incredible as it is, deep research, as incredible as it is, they have smarter versions of it, 100% within their labs that they're testing right now.
Yeah, it's fascinating to that last point because I don't think this applies to our audience, but there's so many people out there that I feel like just stopped updating their mental models.
Yeah,
Like I still hear so much about, well, it hallucinates. Well, it can't do this. Well, it can't
not
hold these
agentic.
documents in memory, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's like, sure, I'm not denying any of that, but you really need to start paying attention to what's already existing.
Yeah, I just being realistic. Like I don't think it's ignorance most of the time. Like I think it's denial, honestly. Like I
Yeah.
really think that the majority of people who aren't willing to like realize that this is a distinct possibility, that the next few years looks nothing like today. I think it's just denial that like nothing can change that fast. It's not possible that it can do what I do. Like I think it is, and I'm not a psychologist by trade. I think it's like largely rooted in that we
Yeah,
just can't accept it, that it could possibly be that different that fast.
I agree. All right, our next topic, there is some more drama shaping up between Sam Altman and Elon Musk, and Musk's Grok AI chatbot is in the middle of this. So a new spat between the two started off when Musk posted about Altman online. He reposted something and appeared to call out Altman for past tweets critical of the Trump administration way back in 2016. Altman responded saying, hey, I got it wrong back then, and then posted an article from 2022 that reported Musk was being critical of Trump at the time. Then Altman posted, hey, anyway, see you next week, in apparent reference to both of them being in the Middle East for a state visit by Trump. And he then said, quote, let's be friends. AGI is too important to let a little feud get in the way. Now,
With the
Musk,
sad emoji and the
with the
fingers pointing. Hilarious. It's such
yeah,
a great
it's
tweet.
crazy. These are going to be like the pieces of content that are like enshrined in history here. You
Oh my
know,
God.
this is done.
Emojis.
Yeah, and Musk, I don't think responded to that one, but Altman took another opportunity to needle him a bit because it came out just after this that Grok spent several hours over this week for some reason pushing a bizarre fixation on, quote, white genocide in South Africa. It was injecting this topic into all sorts of unrelated posts and responses. XAI comes out blaming the incident on what they call an unauthorized modification to
At
its
3
system
a.m.
prompt at 3 a.m. According to XAI, someone altered Grok's instructions to force this politically charged response, in direct violation apparently of their internal policy. Altman then kind of gets the last laugh here, saying he posted about this and said, quote, there are many ways this could have happened. I'm sure XAI will provide a full and transparent explanation soon, but this can only be properly understood in the context of white genocide in South Africa as an AI program to be maximally true. And then he trails off, like just totally trolling. So, Paul, I kind of want to focus on like there's obviously always this drama, this back and forth, but this is not the first time something like this has happened with Grok. And like, I guess I just have to ask because both times it's been seemingly like issues that one person in particular really cares about, and that person is Elon Musk. Like, is he just going in and making these changes?
I don't know. That is certainly what is being implied by Sam and other people online is So if you recall, like 2 months ago, there was this issue again where Grok got changed by an employee,
Mhm.
and they supposedly put a whole bunch of like guardrails in place so that couldn't happen. So I would imagine that the number of people who can at 3 a.m. make a change to the system prompt that guides Grok's behavior is quite limited. And there's certainly one person in particular you would assume has that ability. So I have no idea. But for me, at the bigger picture level, one, it's funny. Obviously, in the Middle East trip where they were there for like these energy deals and data center deals, which we're not going to get into in this episode, I don't think. But like there was massive deals being made to drive AI infrastructure, basically. And so they were there together, which is what Sam had alluded to. And then this tweet kind of taking these shots at Grok happened 6 days later. So we're guessing they didn't make peace while they were there. It was not a peace summit, I would say. The fundamental problem to me that this is demonstrative of is the bias of the models we are relying on to power society. So like it's basically 5 models right now that the vast majority of users use. And one of them, which is going to be embedded into humanoid robots, cars, X, all these places, apparently someone can just go in and change them, and it completely changes their behavior in the way that the human is trying to change it.
Mhm.
So Grok, I got to give him credit. The thing is pretty honest.
Yeah.
Its training data has caused it to say all kinds of things that Elon Musk would not want it to say. There does just seem to be certain topics that really bother him that then somehow magically the system prompt is changed to not do that thing. This is why there's all this push for like they need to be democratic, like
Right.
because the humans decide they're democratic. They provide the training data to make them democratic in nature. So it's just illustrative of the fact that we are reliant on human decisions and bias to actually build these supposedly unbiased models.
Next up, a new survey came out from our friend SEO expert Andy Crestodina and the research firm Question Pro, and it has some compelling new data on AI and search. Their survey pulls over 1,000 people in the US across a range of questions related to AI and search. We'll put the link to the full recap that Andy posted in the show notes, but a couple interesting callouts they found. 72% of searchers use Google's AI overview when it appears, which has big implications for click-throughs and organic traffic. 62% of people use an AI chatbot every day. 51% of chatbot users plan to use them more. And 49% of people think AI will eventually replace search engines. Additionally, it talks about how Google's AI overviews now appear at the top of half of all search results. And ChatGPT, which obviously has barely existed for 3 years, is now the dominant AI tool. It is outpacing by a long shot Microsoft and Google's AI tools. And it's not always clear when people are reaching for chatbots over search based on the data, but this data does provide some more nuance. So for local info or reviews, it seems Google is still winning there. But for messy, kind of multi-part questions, think something like find me venues in Chicago with vegan food and river views. Chatbots seem to increasingly be the default for people on those types of searches. Now, among all this, they point out very clearly search usage is actually up, but the ways in which we seem to be searching are changing quite a bit thanks to the existence of AI chatbots. So, Paul, I found this to be pretty helpful and nuanced. Like, I like that we're not just saying, search or SEO is dead or alive or whatever. We're
Yeah.
just getting a more balanced picture of the changes ahead. But I do think we just have to accept that this is going to change a little faster than we anticipate, don't we?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick like personal anecdote here. So I was planning a trip to New York. So for Mother's Day for my wife, she's loves libraries and bookstores and rare books in particular. And I was like, I don't like that'd be a fun Mother's Day gift. Like let me like plan a book tour basically in New York. So I actually went to ChatGPT first. I was like, I'd love to like plan this like unique getaway for my wife for Mother's Day. I want what are some cities we could do it at? And I started with cities and actually came up with New York. And then I happened to have a talk in New York. So I was like, oh, perfect. Like, let's do this. So it found the library hotel for me, which I did not know existed, that has Dewey Decimal System floors and like rooms. Like, it's
That's
awesome.
awesome.
It's across from the New York library. So I was like, perfect. And I was like, okay, what else would you see if you were going to go on a multi-day book tour in New York? What are the places you would have to see? And it wrote up a summary of like 6 bookstores at why they would be important. I gave a little context of like the kinds of books she likes, things like that. So this is all living in ChatGPT so far. Everything's happening. It's giving me URLs, whatever. So then I was like, all right, well, let me map this out. Like, how is this in relation? Now I went to Google Maps and I actually like popped in each one, like, where are these things in the map? So that gave me a function for that. And then the only time I ever actually went into Google was to look at the actual websites of each of the places. It was not the search function itself. And then I think I did one Google search just to verify of like, oh, what are the places? Basically the same as I gave the prompt, like, what are the places we would have to see? What are the bookstores? And it just verified that, yeah, the 6 that I already had were like the places to go. So I mean, that's an evolved search for me. That is like a total change in how I would have planned that trip previously from a year ago even.
Right.
And honestly, it was amazing. And then I had ChatGPT like help me write descriptions of each of them and created like a presentation with like about each one, and it was perfect. So yeah, I think that more and more that's what's going to happen, and I do think the next generation, like, they're just never going to go to
Well,
search.
like we talked about with them treating it as an operating system, that changes everything.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, our next topic is related to kind of a hot topic we talked about last week. Then we talked about a New York Magazine article that went viral about how AI is causing a cheating epidemic in higher education. In that article, the educators interviewed were kind of almost at the point of despair about AI's impact on classrooms. They were really worried it was replacing wholesale the need for students to do critical thinking and engage with the learning process. So we actually wanted to continue the discussion of AI in education this week with a couple other updates that provide some more context on this topic. Now, this week, it's actually about how AI could be impacting education in positive ways. So a couple developments that we've been tracking. Bowling Green State University, which is in our backyard here in Ohio, is launching the first undergraduate degree of its kind in the US, which is a Bachelor of Science in what they call AI plus X. This is set to begin fall of this year. The program pairs core AI training with a second field of study. So it is offering students the chance to apply AI to one of 6 disciplines: computer science, math, physics, history, journalism, or public relations. So the goal is to prepare graduates not just as people who are comfortable around AI technology, but also as domain-aware technologists ready for a diverse set of careers. And then second, some more positive news. A new study seems to indicate that ChatGPT may not be having as adverse an effect on students as some people think it does. A new meta-analysis of 51 studies found that ChatGPT significantly enhanced student learning performance, perception, and higher-order thinking. The strongest effect was on learning performance. Students benefited most when ChatGPT was integrated into problem-based learning models and skills development courses. The impact on learning perception, which is students' attitudes and motivations, was moderate and highly dependent on duration. Longer engagements, beyond 8 weeks or so, led to better emotional engagement, possibly due to getting increasingly comfortable with using ChatGPT in an education context. And then short-term use, unfortunately, showed limited gains, but they say this is likely because students hadn't yet developed the prompting skills to use ChatGPT effectively. So, Paul, we don't want to diminish the very real disruptive impact that AI is having on education right now, but it's also important to highlight the positive, which is when used in the right way, it seems like AI can have a really good impact on learners. How do you weigh these positives and negatives when it comes to this? Because we just see the dark side so often here as well.
It just comes down to responsible use and teaching of responsible use. And, I think even my LinkedIn post about that article, I had some wonderful comments from higher education professionals who were like, yeah, well, here's what we're doing in our classroom. And some of it was amazing stuff. So there are absolutely outliers here of, entire schools and more specifically into the professors and teachers, administrators who are racing ahead to solve for this. And I think we're hopefully going to hear more and more stories like that. I've been an advocate since 2018, I think was the first time I proposed this to a university, that AI 101 should be required for every freshman. Like it should be the absolute thing when you come in, and then you have the fundamentals. And then like what BGSU is doing, which is phenomenal. Like, kudos to them for doing that. And thanks to my dad for sending me that article, because I actually hadn't seen that one. So I think we're going to continue to see that. Now, I will say in the meantime, because this is not going to be evenly distributed, I get asked all the time about advice from parents who have students who are in high school or college. And so I had someone actually reached out to me last week about this. So here's the general advice I give, just for people who are trying to figure out what to do. What I say is, like, regardless of major, get whatever AI experience and education you can to complement the major that they choose. Each university is handling this differently, in terms of what they offer, as we see with BGSU. But I would look for any additional learning opportunities that are focused on the business side of AI, not necessarily the computer science side. So as we talked about earlier, we don't know the importance of coding. I'm a believer that learning to code has benefits far beyond just building software. I think I mentioned this recently, but it teaches you to do hard things, repetitive things. It teaches you to problem solve. It teaches you how to, be a critical thinker. Like, there's value to learning to code regardless of if you use it in your career. But there's tons of opportunities, free, low cost, from Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, like all the tech partners. HubSpot has stuff. So if you're looking for education, you can go, add to your degrees and your studies with e-learning platforms. Our AI Academy that we've had for 5 years, but like we're reimagining and rebuilding now. We're doing a lot more work with things that'll be additive too. We actually have partnerships with some universities who buy licenses for students in classes, and then they take our classes as like complementary to what they're learning in schools. And we're working on some much larger initiatives there under our AI literacy project to expand our efforts in education. So yeah, we're not helpless here. There's good stuff being done, and there's more that we each can do individually, and then, in partnership with some of these bigger organizations.
Our next topic is from AI expert Allie Miller, and she recently shared a somewhat disturbing anecdote about where AI might be headed. So she recently posted on X, quote, "A famous person wore a secret hidden wire while speaking with me about AI." According to her account, she was at an event backstage talking with someone about her private views on AI. And she joked at one point the conversation should have been recorded. The person responded saying they were always mic'd up. And Miller said, quote, "He had a secret mic under his shirt the whole time. No disclosure, no consent, just recording. I felt completely violated." She then pointed out the connection here to AI tools coming down the line. We have things like Meta smart glasses, AI recording necklaces like Limitless, that she says may lead to increased social friction if they become the norm, because they duplicate this very uncomfortable environment. They might erode trust and compel people to be more on their guard. Now, Paul, this is a wild story. It doesn't really, I guess, unfortunately surprise me, but is this the future we're headed towards, where everyone records everything?
Yeah, go back to like the conversation around the Limitless pendant and all that stuff. And I was not a big fan of it, and I remain not a big fan of it. I do worry a lot about this. I don't know the answer. I mean, just in the last week, we saw that Google or Apple is, supposedly planning on integrating, recording devices, cameras into watches. They're working on glasses, apparently. Meta already has glasses. Google is going to have glasses. I'm guessing that we're actually going to see a demonstration of Google's vision for glasses at I/O this week. I think there's a distinct possibility they reintroduce that project into the world. I don't know how we avoid it. I do honestly, like, I find myself uneasy around people wearing Meta glasses already, because I have no idea if they're recording what we're saying. And it's not like I'm saying something that I wouldn't want recorded, but like, I don't want to have to think about it. Like, it's just you're just having conversations, and you assume some level of privacy if it's a one-on-one conversation, and that it's not going to end up somewhere. And so I feel very uneasy about that stuff. And if I saw someone wearing a pendant, I would naturally be guarded around them. I don't know. Like, I don't know how this plays out. And I think I'm more conservative than some people when it comes to this stuff. I know a lot of people are like, who cares? Everybody's got their phones out anyway. Everybody's recording everything. Like, I get it, but it's not the same thing. Like, that's a bad counter argument. So yeah, this is a very, very slippery slope. I think it's a direction we go. I don't think the current administration does anything from a regulatory standpoint to stop it. I could absolutely see this though being a major legal thing, a couple years down the road.
Like a landmark case or two about
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So as we come to the end of today's episode, I'm going to quickly run through some AI product and funding updates, Paul, and then we're going to kind of have you wrap things up by answering our listener question of the week.
Cool.
All right. So a bunch of updates this week. First, Perplexity. They are reportedly closing in on a $500 million funding round that would value them at $14 billion. That's a huge jump from last year's $3 billion valuation, but notably lower than the $18 billion it initially targeted. Next up, TikTok has launched a new AI-powered feature called AI Alive that turns still photos into short animated videos directly inside TikTok stories. This is the platform's first image-to-video creation tool. Meta is not having a great week, unfortunately for them. They are quietly pushing back the release of their flagship AI model, Llama 4 Behemoth, originally slated for spring, then bumped to summer. The launch has now been delayed again, likely into the fall or beyond. Generative AI video platform Higgsfield AI has released a feature called Higgsfield Ads, which turns a single product picture into a studio ad in seconds. You literally just upload a product photo, pick from 40 different design templates, and the tool will instantly create a cinematic ad spot. In some other video news, video generation startup Hedra just raised $32 million in a Series A round led by Andreessen Horowitz. The company focuses on character-driven video, which you may have seen in one instance on display lately with trends like taking the internet by storm, like the AI-generated videos of talking babies hosting podcasts. Seems like there's at least a lot of money in talking babies hosting podcasts based on this. Google DeepMind has unveiled Alpha Evolve, an AI coding agent that designs entirely new algorithms. Powered by Gemini models, it will generate thousands of code variations, test them, and evolve the best performers to solve tough problems in math and computing. Interestingly, it's already saved Google real compute. It found a scheduling trick that freed up 0.7% of capacity across data centers, which is huge at global scale. And OpenAI just launched an unusual and ambitious initiative. It's called the OpenAI 2Z Challenge, and it's literally a real-world archaeological treasure hunt powered by AI. Participants are invited to search for undiscovered ancient sites hidden deep in the Amazon rainforest using satellite imagery, LiDAR scans, colonial diaries, and indigenous oral histories. Entrants must use OpenAI's latest models to analyze open source data, identify likely settlement patterns, and propose novel discoveries. And it kind of centers on finding this legendary lost city of Z, which is rumored to lie somewhere in northern Brazil. The winning team gets $250,000 and the opportunity to collaborate with archaeologists to verify their findings in the field. Couple other pieces of news here. Anthropic is about to release 2 upgraded AI models, Claude Sonnet and Claude Opus, which will take a bold step forward in how machines think. This seems to be, from the early commentary, Anthropic's entry into test time compute, which is used by other models on the market to produce deeper reasoning by taking more time to think about problems. Now, some rivals claim what Anthropic is teasing is not that different from what's already out there today, but Anthropic insists their approach will be more robust and adaptive. And last on my end, and Paul, I know you've got an update or two, Google I/O, we've mentioned a couple times, the company's developer conference is happening May 20th to 21st, so definitely expect some announcements from Google in coming days, which we will also cover on next week's episode.
On the baby trend, HeyGen, I think this was just yesterday I saw this. HeyGen announced that in a tweet, it said, baby podcasts are everywhere and our intern just made it a feature. Now you can start a pod even if they're in diapers. Live now on HeyGen. Comment who's these baby hosts remind you of was their tweet. So we'll put that tweet in the link. There is a rumor that Mike and I may be soon turned into a baby version of the artificial intelligence show. So stay tuned for that. I'm sure our team will have some fun with that. And then just a couple of quick notes. The alpha evolve thing's a big deal. Like, we're not going to get into it on this show in depth, but it's something we may come back around to. Like I said before, I think if you go back to AlphaGo and AlphaZero, every AlphaFold, it is the distinct advantage that Google has that has yet to be played out into the models we all have access to. But I think if you go study what they've done there and what they're doing with Alpha Evolve, you start to see how they may actually have like a very strong competitive advantage over the other labs. And then the A to Z challenge from OpenAI, man, I love that. Like,
That's so cool.
I wish I had like hours free that I could go. I would 100% go play around with that. That is like, I love that. There was a Lost City of the Monkey God or something. There was a book I read about like how they use LiDAR to find these. Oh man, I could go all day on that stuff, like space stuff and like hidden cultures and stuff. It's just so cool. Lost cities and civilizations. I love that stuff. Okay, I have a listener question, then we'll wrap up.
All right, so final segment, we're answering listener questions every week, and this week's question is related to the topic of agents, which we talk about quite a bit. This one's specifically about how agencies navigate agents. Do you see agencies in the future being mostly agents with a client-facing team that runs the agents? So what are agents going to do to the agency model?
I don't know how far in the future we're talking. I think, we have an AI for Agencies Summit, and this year, my keynote, so this was November of 24 was the last one. We do it annually. And my keynote for that one was, I think it was like AI agents in the future of agencies or something like that. So we'll put a link in the show notes. You can go get this on demand. It's the only place that talk is available, I think, is on demand. I think agencies are going to be fundamentally reimagined. In some cases, it might be, totally AI native from the ground up, and you just build it with as few employees as possible. And if you focus on distinct services like landing page optimization, media buying, like if they're very specific, repetitive tasks, and that's as a whole, that's what your agency does, is this collection of tasks that are repetitive and data driven and don't have long time horizon, solutions to them, more like consulting work, then sure, like I could see these distinct, narrowly focused agencies probably being automated pretty quickly. Like where most of the work is probably done by the agents in, say like a 2 to 3 year time period. If you're a bigger consulting firm and, you're doing more strategic work, then it's going to totally change the way you do it through like deep research products and things like that. But you're not eliminating the humans. You just need fewer humans. So I think agencies are just going to look fundamentally different in the next few years. Some will be highly automated, and some will just be way, way more efficient, create way more outputs, higher quality outputs through the integration of these tools. But yeah, I mean, they're fundamentally going to transform for sure.
All right, Paul, that's a wrap on another busy week in AI. We've got a lot of updates coming down the line, so looking forward to next week as well. Thanks as always.
Yeah, and we, so Memorial Day is the following Monday. We'll have a regular episode. Yeah, so we'll do the regular weekly, and we'll cover all the model updates and app news and all that good stuff. So thanks, Mike. And again, thanks, as we started the show off, like Mike and I, are truly grateful to have, you all listening each week. We love hearing from you on LinkedIn or in person. And so just thanks for, listening and being a part of this growing community. Thanks for listening to the Artificial Intelligence Show. Visit smarterx.ai to continue on your AI learning journey and join more than 100,000 professionals and business leaders who have subscribed to our weekly newsletters, downloaded AI blueprints, attended virtual and in-person events, taken online AI courses, and earned professional certificates from our AI Academy, and engaged in the Marketing AI Institute Slack community. Until next time, stay curious and explore AI.